Very, very, very recently, the FBI and the Department of Justice, well, the Department of Justice as the FBI, because the FBI is part of the Department of Justice, has been cracking down on parents that are standing up to the teaching of critical race theory in schools. They are labeling these parents domestic terrorists on par with groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Isil and all these. Why? Because these parents do not believe in what's being taught in school as far as basically racist ideology against white people. Now, when my ex's son was in school, they used to teach this nonsense, but nowhere near this badly. This is just blatant. But when my ex's kid went to school, we would go to parent-teacher night, and there was one where they were teaching Black history, and I systematically went through everything they were teaching in Black history, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom, and disproved all of it. I had to go to the library, but I disproved all of it and cited where I was disproving it from. And I gave it to his teacher. And I said, "Why are you teaching lies in school?" And she had no answer for me. And of course, it's not up to the teacher. It's up to the state. It's up to the school board. And the problem with critical race theory is that it is so out of whack that a lot of the people speaking out against it are actually people of color. You have an Afghani woman that's speaking out about it. Numerous black parents are speaking out about it because it's just so crazy and it imparts a mentality of victimhood. You have Hispanic parents speaking out about it, Jewish parents speaking out about it, because it teaches that white people are guilty of all these horrible things based on nothing but their race. And I'm going to put links in the description to prove what I'm saying. What disturbs me is what you do not see a considerable amount of white parents standing up against critical race theory. Okay? I don't know why that is, but you don't. You don't. Unless you're considering Jewish people to be white, you don't see a considerable amount of white people speaking out against critical race theory. So, what I also would like to point out is political people that you see speaking out about this. You have Ted Cruz and Tulsi Gabbard, primarily. These are the only two political people speaking out about this. Ted Cruz, of course, is a mestizo American. He's a Cuban mestizo. And Tulsi Gabbard, of course, is of Polynesian descent. She's white and Polynesian. She's half white, half Polynesian, and Hindu. And these are the only people speaking out on behalf of white people, politically speaking. Okay? Now, remember when I was supporting Tulsi Gabbard in the Democratic primary, a lot of people were telling me, Tulsi Gabbard's not pro-white, Tulsi Gabbard's not pro-white. No, Tulsi Gabbard does one better. Tulsi Gabbard's pro-American. And that's what I was explaining. Tulsi Gabbard is standing up for these people's First Amendment rights to speak up for themselves. And I assume that she's also against critical race theory for how ridiculous it is. Now, what's disturbing about this is when I was younger, now I'm no longer involved in any white groups. I don't even think that white people are worth defending at this point. I really don't. And I really do not. I don't believe white people are worth my time, worth my energy, and unfortunately I found this out too late in life. Okay? I found this out too late in life. And I found this out, people can say I used to get harassed when my little friend from Argentina would comment on my videos, and people used to call her a Mexican and all this crap. And they would argue with me about her, and they would call her my wife and all that. I would be elated if she was my wife, because she's a lot better than a white woman. Why is she better than a white woman? She has a brain. That's the thing. A lot of white women no longer think. It was funny. I didn't want to get my video taken down, so I'm going to talk about this in a very nonchalant way. But my ex-girlfriend wanted me to do this because I used to make fun of her for this. Okay, what's wrong with white women? Why are white men replacing their women with Hispanics, Asians, Arabs, East Indians, etc.? It's happening all over the place. And a lot of these women are flocking to white men because white men, what don't we do? We don't beat our women. Generally speaking, white men do not beat their women. And there's statistical evidence to prove domestic violence differences between whites and non-whites, and whites commit far less domestic violence than people of Hispanic descent, than people of African American descent, than people of even of Asian descent, people of Middle Eastern descent, people of indigenous descent. White men do not commit that much domestic violence when compared to these other groups. But the main reason that white men, have grown so sick and tired of white women is because white women, they can talk, they can mouth off, they can eat a lot. But what don't they do anymore? They don't cook, they don't clean, they don't maintain their appearance. Okay? So you see a lot of this, and I'm not against white women, but my thing is that white people as a group, I wasted most of my life defending white people. Okay, my father was a National Socialist. I was born into the ideology of American National Socialism. I believe that it was accurate perhaps at one time, but it's not now. No, it's not. Because the white American has so degenerated in so many ways, and I don't mean this in necessarily a biological sense, but in an ideological sense, in a prideful sense. They have no pride in who they are. They've allowed other white people. This is the thing. Everybody's like, oh, it's this group, it's that group. I'm not going to name certain groups because I don't want my video taken down. I'm very worried that this one might get taken down for the nature of the video, but I'm going to make it anyway. In my opinion, white people have allowed other white people that are pathetic and self-hating to demoralize and destroy them, while simultaneously building up other people that didn't need building up to begin with, such as Hispanics, Asians, blacks, etc. These people had pride in themselves already. When I went to school as a youth, I went to school with Hispanics and blacks. Before I went to schools for delinquents, my school was relatively multicultural. Okay. And I went to school with Asians. One of my good friends was an East Indian girl. Okay. And, these people they're not self-loathing people. They didn't need to be built up. It's this fake liberal mindset from the white liberal that stated that these people have to be lifted up. And how did the white liberal lift up the other groups? By demoralizing the whites, by telling these people that whites are responsible for all the ills of society. And this is what has created critical race theory. Now, there are roles played by, let's just say there's roles played by people of color that have interests in gaining power, interests in their groups taking power. But with white people have not been a group for such a long time. Everything's been so, well, I'm an individual. I don't need a group. I'm an individual. I don't need this and I don't need that. I'm just going to earn my money and go home. I'm going to keep my head down at work and I'm going to trudge along, and then when I get home, I'm going to have more money and a bigger paycheck, and And they didn't care about the group. They didn't care about the group, the health of the group, the viability of the group, etc. So what do we have? We don't have a group. If you ask the average white person, what is white American culture? Can they give you an answer? I can. Can the average white American give you an answer as to what is white American culture? I doubt it. I can. Most can't. Okay? The thing is, the very tolerance and understanding. Somebody asked me, they said, you seem very tolerant for somebody with your political views. I don't think that my political views, when I was pro-white, I don't think that being pro-white is an intolerant attitude. It doesn't necessarily have to be an intolerant attitude or an intolerant stance. I've always been polite to everyone, okay, until they're impolite to me. I don't go around being impolite to people. I hold the door for black women as well as white women. I say please and thank you to people of all races. I treat people with dignity and respect. I always have, until they treat me with disrespect. Okay? And that's the key difference. That's the key difference that people need to understand here, is you don't need to be disrespectful, you don't need to be belligerent, and you don't need to act the way that you don't have to act the way Hollywoodism tells you need to act. You're not living in American History X, okay? But the facts are the facts. What I've determined is that the whites in the world, not even just in America, some countries like in Europe, they're even far worse off than they are in America. They're more demoralized, more despicable, okay? They're not worth my time. Just not worth my time anymore. I wasted my life helping white people, or trying to. When I was younger, I've been pointing out the dangers of Antifa since the 1990s. When we would go to different events when I was younger, I went to events, okay, when Antifa would attack my people, we would report it to the police. There were Antifa, sharp skinheads against racial prejudice that would attempt to fight us, okay? And on the bright side, most of them can't fight, just like Antifa. Most of them cannot fight, okay? But the thing is, when you go to the police and say you were attacked by a horde of communist militants, what do? They accused us of spreading a red scare. I was told by one of the police officers, you're trying to cause a red scare, okay? That's what we were told. For years, people like me, since the 1950s, people like me have explained, first they're going to silence people like me. Then they're going to silence the moderate conservatives. Then they're going to silence everyone that doesn't agree with them, period. Then they're going to outlaw police action. They're going to make it very difficult for police to do their jobs. And then they're going to rend control of this country from the rightful people that created this country. Now, it might not all have happened exactly in that order. A lot of it happened, it seems, simultaneously at this point. But it all happened. It all happened. And who wasn't listening? Who wasn't listening? The average white American wasn't listening. Who's going to pay the price? The average white American. True, in generations, the elites will pay the price as well. True, in generations, all of humanity will pay the price. As I was talking with someone earlier today, I explained, because they said, oh, actually my ex-girlfriend, who is an ardent anti-racist, I was joking that if you're a white straight male, you can't do or say anything. And I was jokingly saying something about white straight males, and she said, don't worry about it. There's not going to be many of you left in a little while anyway. Okay, that's an accurate statement. An accurate statement. Now, Where does that fall? Where does the brunt of that fall? It falls on Western civilization. The generators, the people that generated Western civilization, when they cease to be, what do you think Western civilization is going to look like? Okay? I'm not a magic dirt conservative. Magic dirt conservatism, like that promoted by Rush Limbaugh and similar people, has this idea that you can bring anyone in from anywhere else and they'll be exactly the same as the people that created the country, as long as you teach them conservatism. No. Nope. Not going to happen. It just doesn't happen. And it's nothing against these groups of people. I personally, and people know this, I don't even care. People can tell by the videos that I've made that are very open and expressive at this point. I had a very clear goal in mind about going to Argentina. I wanted to knock up a girl that is blatantly indigenous. Blatantly indigenous. You look at her, and what comes to mind is Pocahontas from Disney's Pocahontas. If anything else is coming to your mind, you're looking at a different girl. Okay? So my point is, I gave up all auspices and all ideas of racism and this and that many years ago. I quit because it isn't working out for me. Because it's not accurate anymore. And it never really was 100% accurate, but where it is accurate is the concept that there are different groups of people. And if you read a book on biological anthropology, you will understand that different types of people produce different civilizations. This is not a bad thing. Human biodiversity is not a bad thing. Human mixture of different peoples is not a bad thing. People can tell you it is, but they're racists. Okay? Racists are telling you it's a bad thing. I remember many years ago, before I met my current girlfriend, I was in Job Corps, and I was dating I think she was Puerto Rican, actually. And the Hispanic guys and the black guys didn't like that there was a white guy dating a Puerto Rican girl. Okay, she was clearly mestiza. And, the reason why was because they didn't like that there was a white guy taking a woman that they saw as theirs. Why was I dating her? Interestingly enough, the reason I was dating her was because it was to keep me safe, because I needed somebody to tell me what the Hispanics were saying about me. It's that simple. The only problem with the girl was sometimes she wouldn't tell me what they were saying and would just go after them like a pit bull. And I would have to, calm her down. I think I actually got myself into more trouble dating her than I would have if I didn't date her, because I needed her as a translator. I guess what I'm trying to say is, what you see is the culmination of years of ignorance of the white public. Another thing that's interesting, which I have a unique understanding of, is as a mental health worker, a former mental health worker. When I worked in mental health, there was a lot of, this is actually the culmination of mental health. And when I would go to county meetings, they used to, they would come out with these crazy ideas about how you can't be homophobic and how homophobia is racist and, not racist, homophobia is prejudiced and you shouldn't be allowed to be homophobic, and that if your client comes to you and they're homophobic, you have to correct their attitudes on homophobia. And this is coming from the county. The county is trying to police people's morality. You can't be homophobic. And one of the things I brought up in the meeting, the county meeting, was, where do we, as mental health professionals, draw the line? Okay, do we draw the line at global warming denial? Do we start saying, oh, you don't believe in global warming, you're crazy. You're crazy. Oh, you believe this, you're crazy. You're crazy. And then I brought up the fact that I used to be a white separatist. And I said, now would you tell somebody that's a white separatist that they're crazy? They're crazy. And the woman said, well, yes, you don't have any business having ideas like that. Okay, and I said, well, what about a black separatist? Or a Chicano separatist? Or an Arab separatist? This is because we used to have to go to trainings. Trainings that were so blatantly racist against white people. So ridiculously racist against white people. That in one of the trainings, my white female colleagues were told that if they were physically accosted and forcibly raped by a person of color, whether they were black, Middle Eastern, Hispanic, etc., they went through the whole thing, that if a white woman was physically raped by a person of color, a client of color, that they were guilty of oppressing that person with their whiteness. That's a real live meeting, a training I went to in Harrisburg. Real meeting I went to, real training. Real training that I had to go to keep my legitimacy of working. If I didn't go to the training, I'd lose my ability to have my job. Now, I'm not saying this was part of the training, but we all know from that Kilhanani, that Arun Kilhanani, that these people really do exist, and they're very prominent in mental health, these anti-white people. Now, as this goes on and on and on and on, and this is not just about white people, this is about innocent people and psychiatric abuse and the abuse of people with psychiatry. And I brought up at this county meeting, I go, psychiatric abuse was the bedrock of Nazi and Soviet persecution of the public. And I said it's a slippery slope, a very slippery slope, when you start utilizing psychiatry and the mental health industry to ostracize people based on their own unique morality, their own unique outlooks on life, and things that do not actually pertain to whether somebody is mentally ill or not. And I was told, oh, well, that's never going to happen. That's not what we're doing. I'm sure a lot of the people that started working in the Soviet Union and slowly started, persecuting people, oh, well, we're only persecuting communists. Oh, we're only persecuting Jews. We're only persecuting fascists. Right? Only fascists. That's what happened in the Soviet Union. We're only persecuting this group of people. We're only persecuting black people or brown people or white people. It'll never get out of hand. Never get out of hand. You don't think that this is exactly what a lot of the doctors and psychiatrists in the USSR and Nazi Germany thought? And that's the problem, is this is what you have with the CRT and the use of the FBI to crack down on parents. Mind you, not white parents. Most of the parents standing up against critical race theory are people of color. There's zero white people that I know that are standing up against it, because white people are cowardly. White people refuse to stand up for themselves. You see, like I said, an Afghani woman. The politicians, the only two politicians standing up for white people against this are Tulsi Gabbard and Ted Cruz. Two people of color. Not one white politician, certainly not a white Republican, is standing up for these white parents, well, not white parents, but for these parents that are now considered terrorists by the Department of Justice for telling the school system, no, you're not going to be teaching my children to be racist. So my point is this all culminated from the mental health. Mental health. It all comes from mental health. You can go back to Teen Screen. Teen Screen was a diabolical a diabolical idea from the big pharma front group NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, or mentally ill, or something like that. And it's all incestuous. Once you start working in mental health and in these nonprofits, you start seeing how incestuous it is, how people on this board also sit on this board, and this board, and they're friends with this congressperson or that congressperson or this senator and that senator and da-da-da-da-da, this mayor and that and da-da-da. They're all friends. Everybody's good friends because everybody has something to gain. And that's what people don't understand. But what Teen Screen was a way to have children be labeled with mental illnesses and become candidates for psychiatric abuse, essentially. The drugging of children. And this was all done without the knowledge of the parents. Luckily, the Attorney General of Pennsylvania shot it down and considered it to be unlawful. It was practiced, though, in some areas. They would have pizza parties and, oh, just come here and take this test. Oh, my God, you have social anxiety disorder. You need Xanax. My point is that everything is a slippery slope. And that people that lack the attention, the ability to pay attention for more than what's happening right now, they don't have the ability to look backward and they don't have the ability to look forward. They will always have the inability to see how they're getting screwed. Now, in fairness, most of them don't care anyway, because most of them feel as though they have no right to exist. But that's not the point. The point is that white Americans have now been totally deemed second-class citizens. And if anybody stands up for white Americans, they're now terrorists, according to the Department of Justice, according to the FBI. Think about it. That's all for this video.